Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. We're back with cricket. Only 5 days to the start of the 2020 Hero Caribbean Premier League. The entire tournament will be played at the Queen's Park Oval and Brian Lara Cricket Academy in Trinidad and Tobago from August 18 to September 10. SportsMax, your home of champions, will have live coverage of the matches. On Tuesday, at a media briefing, the Cricket Operations Director for the CPL, Michael Hall, confirmed that all players and staff have tested negative for COVID-19. But the captain of the St. Lucia Zouks, Darren Sammy, has raised serious questions about the apparent double standards applied to players from the Trinbago Knight Riders and those from the other franchises. Sammy posted these tweets. How can everybody else be in a bubble, no access to training or practice games, while others on the outside in a COVID-infected area be training and playing practice games, then allowed to join the bubble without self-isolation? Angry faces. Everyone should have been in the bubble from day one. That's the only way you can guarantee everyone's health and safety is not compromised. But hey, I'm no COVID expert. Joining us on Zoom to talk about the issues raised by Sammy is Dr. Akshay Mansingh. Dr. Mansingh, welcome to the SportsMax Zone.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners and viewers.
All right, I start with asking you about Darren Sammy, those tweets that he made. Of course, he said that everybody should have been in the bubble from day one. You are the expert. Talk to us about Darren Sammy's sentiments.
Well, in fact, perhaps I'm not. So if you go with his last statement, which is, hey, I'm no COVID expert, neither am I. And therefore, we have to go with those who are.
Right.
And the entire setup of the CPL has been based off of intense negotiations and discussions with the Chief Medical Officer of Trinidad and Tobago and the Ministry of Health, and by extension, the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I think what needs to be understood, and a lot of our players are coming out of a bubble from England. And what the difference was in England was that there was a set of people going from a low-risk COVID area to England, which is one of the highest countries in the world with COVID. And so that was a slightly different thing, because we had to keep our players away from potential infection. What's happening in Trinidad and Tobago is still a very low COVID-infected area, certainly when we came here. And the fear was the other way around, that here we were bringing close to 200 people from 18 countries, every continent in the world, into a country whose borders are still closed and which is very low risk in COVID. And therefore, just like anybody else, we had to undergo a 2-week quarantine.
Dr. Mansingh, the way how the tweet was posed, many people would have felt that the TKR players, because he singled out the TKR players, posing a threat to the international players, and of course those are the people coming in from the Caribbean. Did you see it in that way, or is it that those that were coming into Trinidad and Tobago would have posed a threat to the Trinis?
Well, firstly, as I said, the stance in Trinidad's borders are still closed.
Yeah.
And therefore, the few people who do come in on charter flights and so on. Now, the laws of Trinidad and Tobago are that anybody who comes, Trinidadian citizen or not, has to undergo 2 weeks of quarantine in a government facility, or I think there are some hotels that are designated that you can pay to stay in. For the CPL, we have taken over the Hilton, and we are basically here for the 2-week period. I'll point out to you that there's some Trinidadian citizens who came in from that same bubble out of England, off the English tour, who have been in their rooms for 2 weeks. They have nothing to do with CPL. They haven't seen their families yet, because the rule of the land is that you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Why? Because Trinidad, certainly up to a few days ago, did not have a rampant COVID problem. And so the government wanted to make sure that it's not just 2 weeks of quarantine, we're having our temperatures taken twice a day, we're having 3 tests done within that period, and only after that will they allow not only us to go out into the community, so to speak, that is to go to the cricket ground and so on, but they'll allow their citizens to come into our contact, because they figure that that's when we are now safe for them. And I should point out that the players outside, who are outside of the bubble, who are training, are not just Trinbago Knight Rider players. Those are residents of Trinidad and Tobago. It predominantly has Knight Rider players, but it also has people like Nicholas Puran, who plays for the Guyana Amazon Warriors. It has a Jamaican named Odin Smith, who happens to be resident here. And on the flip side, a lot of the overseas players for the Trinbago Knight Riders are in the bubble with us, including their coach, Brendan McCallum, and their deputy coach, their assistant coach, Nikita Miller. So whatever training is taking place outside is taking place by Trinidadians, not by necessarily Trinbago Knight Riders.
So then you would say that there's no clear advantage for the players that are training outside. Because then we can think about, of course, Jason Holder, who just came from the tour, Shea Hope and whatnot. So no clear advantage, right?
Well, the point is this, that Shea Hope, Jason Holder, all of us are in this bubble for 2 weeks, the quarantine for 2 weeks. Now, the little leeway we did get from the Ministry of Health after a lot of assurances and so on, is that they've allowed us after 1 week to allow the teams to go for training. And we've set up a bubble at the UWI St. Augustine ground, whereby the ground staff and so on go and prepare the ground. And after that, the players will come in, utilize the ground and one dressing room. Then they leave, we lock that dressing room, the groundsmen go on the ground, and then another team will come, the groundsmen leave, they use the second dressing room, and at the end of the day, we then fumigate the entire area and sterilize it. So the leeway we've gotten is that as of this Monday, teams have been going to UWI-SPEC, the St. Augustine campus, to train there. Also, they're now allowed to move around in small clusters, including going to the gym, including doing some drills that they're doing around the premises and so on. So we've gotten that sort of leeway because you do realize that the matches start a day after the quarantine is lifted. And that obviously, people have to match ready and so on. So training is taking place, the teams are going there, and hopefully they'll be match ready as well. So if there's a disadvantage, it's just that, the people outside of the bubble could perhaps train more, could have practice matches, but we cannot come into Trinidad and Tobago and tell their citizens what to do and what not to do.
I think if you look at it from Darren Sammy's standpoint, though, Doc, he's coming from some very low numbers. St. Lucia, only 25 recorded COVID-19 cases, and all recovered, by the way. So the balance that you just presented just now, that based on the representation of the entire contingent coming from all continents, that it is high risk coming into low risk. Darren Sammy wouldn't be seeing it that way based on where he's coming from. So
and the truth is that a lot of the players, not just Darren, as you said, there are people from Anguilla, from St. Kitts and other islands. Trinidad doesn't see that like that. Trinidad says that if you're coming from outside of Trinidad, this is what you have to do. Now, we had to be very careful too, because when we brought the charter flights in, we made sure that the CARICOM nationals came on different flights and got to the hotel at a different time. And then non-CARICOM people who came from countries which have some of the highest rates in the world, from India, from the USA, etc., that they came in on a different bus and were kept at a different part of the hotel until everybody's tests, as I said, 2 have come back negative, which means that there's probably a 95% chance that everybody's okay. But we have our final testing on Sunday. So you're correct that people have come from zones which are probably even less infected than Trinidad. But the truth is that the law of the land is what it is. And whether you're coming from St. Lucia and you're a Trinidadian citizen or not, you have to undergo the same protocol that the ministry has put out.
Dr. Mansingh, well, thank you so much for joining us and shedding some light on that. Of course, now we are much clearer. And thank you, and continue to stay safe.
Thanks much. Yes, well, we're all in the same bubble together.
All right. Thank you, of course, Dr. Akshay Mansingh, the CPL's Chief Medical Officer. We go to break.
We come to play. Who's the next champion? All of this excitement, the whole world waiting to see who come to play.